My name is Meredith Vale, and I was 36 years old when the pastor's wife pulled me behind the donation table at a church fundraiser and asked why I never came to their house. Not my house, their house. She said it gently, like she was afraid I might break if she used a sharper voice. I was holding a tray of mini quiches I had baked in my own kitchen at 6 that morning, after spending $217 on ingredients and paper goods my husband said the church needed for a community fundraiser. I was proud of him then. Caleb had told me he was helping at New Mercy Community Church every Wednesday night, repairing pantry shelves, organizing donation boxes, setting up dinners for families who needed a warm meal. I thought my husband was becoming generous. I thought the late nights were service. Then Elaine Porter, the pastor's wife, touched my elbow near the fellowship hall kitchen and said, "Meredith, I always wondered why you never came to their house for the small group dinners." I looked at her because I did not understand. She looked past me toward the bulletin board, where a photo showed my husband standing beside a woman named Lydia Kane. They were shoulder to shoulder in a bright kitchen I had never seen, smiling under a printed caption that said Wednesday Outreach Hosts. I felt something in me go quiet. Not loud, not dramatic. Quiet in the way a room goes quiet when a door locks from the outside. For almost a year, Caleb had built an entire church life where another woman stood beside him in public. Not an obvious affair people could name easily, something softer and worse. They hosted dinners. They planned charity events. They sat together in volunteer meetings. They welcomed new couples. People assumed I was separated, uninterested, anxious, or too cold to care. And while Lydia received applause for the meals, the baskets, the linens, the pantry shelves, and the warm little touches everyone praised, my catering deposits, my household supplies, and my hands had been feeding half those events from home. Caleb had told the church I did not like people. He said I preferred to stay home. He turned my absence into a character flaw while using my labor to make another woman look like his partner. I did not confront him that night. I folded the church bulletin into my receipt folder. I took pictures of the volunteer board. I collected donation records, kitchen invoices, grocery receipts, account transfers, and the messages where he asked for one more tray, one more basket, one more favor for the ministry. By the time the charity board meeting came, Caleb and Lydia expected me to be invisible again. Instead, I walked in with an advisor, a receipt binder, Elaine's schedule copies, and a reimbursement letter showing $7,840 of my catering money and household supplies had been used to support events where another woman was thanked beside my husband. The pastor turned over one donation receipt, saw my business account printed at the bottom, and looked at Caleb. Then he said, "This church thanked the wrong person because you let us." Before I tell you what happened next, welcome back to Hush and Tell Stories. If you have ever been erased from the very place your own hands helped build, this story is for you. Tell me in the comments what you would do if your husband used community service to create a public life with someone else. And subscribe if quiet truth is the kind of justice you understand. I did not grow up suspicious of churches. That matters because whenever a story involves church, people rush to decide which side they are supposed to defend. I am not here to tell you faith made my husband lie. Faith did not empty our pantry, swipe our debit card, or tell people I disliked them. Caleb did that. People can hide selfishness inside almost anything that looks holy from the outside. That was the kind of service I understood. Useful, quiet, clean. I became a catering prep worker almost by accident. I did not go to culinary school. I started by helping a friend make boxed lunches for a corporate training event, then bridal shower trays, then funeral spreads, then church dinners, then small local events where people wanted food that tasted like someone had cared without charging a wedding price. By 34, I had built a modest home-based catering business called Meredith Vale Kitchen. I liked it. I liked feeding rooms without needing to own them. That was one reason Caleb and I worked in the beginning. We met when he hired me to provide food for an employee volunteer luncheon. He stayed after to stack chairs. Not because anyone asked him, he said, but because leaving a woman to carry folding tables alone was bad character. I remember laughing at that. You judge character by folding tables? I asked. By what people do when the event is over, he said. That was a good line. Caleb had many good lines. He loved being seen helping. He loved a moment where someone noticed he had fixed a shelf, carried a heavy box, replaced a light fixture, set up a sound system, or stayed late. He did help. That is why it took me so long to see the shape of the lie. Caleb did not fake generosity completely. He practiced enough of it to make the performance believable. For a while, our marriage felt steady in the ordinary way. Not cinematic. Good. Bills, dinners, quiet Sundays, grocery lists on the fridge, a shared calendar full of work deliveries and his maintenance calls. He liked that I worked from home because the house always smelled like something warm. I liked that he could fix things without making me feel helpless for needing help. Then came the rough year. His job changed managers. My business slowed for 2 months after a big venue switched caterers. We argued about money, not because we were broke, but because uncertainty makes every receipt feel louder. Caleb started coming home sharp-edged, complaining that his life had become nothing but bills, repairs, and my catering schedule. I asked him once what he needed. He said, "I need to feel useful somewhere that is not just stress." A few weeks later, he started volunteering at New Mercy Community Church. We were not regular members there. We had attended Christmas Eve service once with his coworker. New Mercy was a mid-sized church with a red brick sanctuary, a fellowship hall added in the 80s, and a community outreach program people respected. They ran food drives, clothing closets, after-school snacks, winter coat collections, and Wednesday night dinners for families who needed help stretching the week. Caleb came home the first Wednesday with dust on his jeans and paint on his hands. They had pantry shelves sagging so bad I thought the canned beans were going to take somebody out, he said. Fixed 2 brackets and a loose cabinet door. I smiled. You sound happy. He flexed his fingers like his hands ached. It feels good to be useful somewhere that is not just bills and stress. I remembered that sentence from before. This time, I was relieved. I wanted him to have something outside the house that made him softer when he came back to it. I wanted his goodness to have a place to stretch. I wanted to be proud of him because pride is easier than suspicion when you love someone. So when he said the church needed snacks for volunteers the next week, I sent 2 trays. That was how it started. Small, reasonable, kind. Caleb always asked like it was no big deal. Could you do 1 tray? Do we have extra foil pans? Can I take those leftover cups from your event? The church is paying me back next week. Lydia said the donation table looks better with real cloth under the baskets. Do we have something neutral? Lydia. Her name appeared first as a detail, not a threat. Lydia Kane was a widow in her late 30s who coordinated the widows, meal train, and helped with small groups. Caleb said she was organized, warm, a little intense, but good at making people feel included. He mentioned her the way married men mention capable women when they want the name to sound harmless through repetition. Lydia knows everyone's dietary restrictions. Lydia says the pantry list is outdated. Lydia thinks the donation baskets would work better by family size. Lydia asked if you could do those spinach pinwheels again. I noticed the name, but I did not resent it at first. The first real discomfort came when Caleb said Lydia loved my food. I looked up from labeling containers. She knows it is mine. He paused for half a second too long. Of course. That pause was so small I almost missed it. Almost. What exactly did you say? I asked. He laughed. Meredith, I am not submitting footnotes with the pasta salad. I tell people you help. Help how? You know, from home. From home. Those 2 words made me feel like a basement. I told myself I was being sensitive. I told myself charity did not need credit. I told myself my mother would have rolled her eyes at me for wanting a name on a foil pan. But this was not about applause. It was about accuracy. When someone else receives praise for what your hands prepared, silence stops being humility. It becomes erasure. Still, I kept helping, because the church needed food, because Caleb seemed calmer on Wednesdays, because marriage is full of tiny negotiations where you tell yourself the cost is small if it keeps peace. Then he started discouraging me from coming, not obviously. Caleb rarely did anything obviously if subtlety could do the work. When I said I might attend a Wednesday dinner, he said, "It is mostly set up and clean up, you would be bored." When I said I wanted to meet the outreach team, he said, "They are a little churchy for you. I do not want you feeling trapped in polite conversations." When I said I could drop off trays myself, he said, "No need. Parking is terrible, and Lydia has the kitchen flow down." The first time I asked directly if he did not want me there, he looked wounded. "Meredith, why would you say that? Because every time I offer, you explain why I should not." He sighed and rubbed his face. "I am trying to protect your energy. You work around people all week. You always say events drain you." "I say events drain me after I work them." You know what I mean? That sentence. People use it when they do not want to be pinned to the words they actually chose. I let it go. Again. By spring, our house had become a staging area for church life I never saw. Cases of water in the laundry room. Paper napkins stacked in my pantry. Donation baskets on the dining table. Folding labels, ribbon, little chalkboard signs, bulk crackers, fruit trays, iced tea jugs, serving gloves, name tags. Caleb would come home with stories. Pastor Aaron cried when the pantry shelves were finally organized. Elaine hugged everyone after the coat drive. A single mother brought her kids to dinner and said it saved her week. Lydia made a widow laugh for the first time since Christmas. The church smelled like soup and lemon bars. My lemon bars, I wanted those stories to be enough, but I began noticing what was missing. No one ever sent a thank you card to me. When Caleb received church texts, he angled his phone away. Not dramatically, just enough. When I asked whether the church reimbursed the supplies, he said, "Some of it, do not worry." When I checked our household account, I saw grocery runs that were larger than usual. But I was busy, and busy women often postpone suspicion until the receipt becomes too large to ignore. In June, Caleb asked for a catering deposit advance. That was the phrase he used. A catering deposit advance. He said the church had ordered supplies for a big summer community dinner, and the vendor needed payment before the church's reimbursement check cleared. He asked if I could cover it from my business account for a week. "How much?" I asked. "Just $1,200. $1,200 is not just anything when it comes out of a small catering account." I told him I needed an invoice. He smiled. "You sound like a banker." "I sound like a business owner." He kissed my forehead. "I will get it." He did. The invoice came through forwarded from his email. Kitchen staples, disposable pans, bulk chicken produced 2 chafing racks. It looked legitimate. It had the church name in the bulletin field and my business card in the payment attachment, because Caleb had used my account. I paid it. The reimbursement did not come in a week. When I asked, he said the church treasurer was behind. When I asked again, he said Lydia was tracking it. When I asked a third time, he said, "Please do not make generosity ugly." That line stopped me because it was not his usual style. It sounded borrowed. I wondered if Lydia had said it. Then I hated myself for wondering. By July, Caleb's church life had a rhythm. Wednesday nights, some Saturdays, one Friday planning meeting each month. He came home smelling like coffee, dish soap, and other people's gratitude. He talked about church members by first name: Dale with the bad knee, Marcia whose husband left, the twins who only ate plain pasta, Mrs. Nguyen who brought herbs from her garden. He had a whole map of a community I had helped feed but never entered. I decided to attend the August fundraiser because I was tired of being thanked secondhand by my own husband. Caleb did not love the idea. He stood in the kitchen doorway while I packed mini quiches into insulated carriers. "You really do not have to come," he said. "I know. It will be crowded. I have worked crowded rooms. Church crowded is different." I looked at him. "Different how?" He picked up the stack of napkins and pretended to straighten them. "People ask personal questions. They can be a lot. I am 36, Caleb. I can survive a church fundraiser." His jaw tightened for a moment, then he smiled. "Of course, I just want you comfortable." On the drive there, he was too cheerful. That is another thing women learn late. A man trying to manage a room before you enter it will often become unusually pleasant. New Mercy's Fellowship Hall was warm and bright when we arrived. Round tables with white plastic cloths, donation envelopes at the entrance, a dessert auction along one wall, children running in church clothes. older men carrying coffee urns, women arranging flowers in mason jars. The smell of baked ziti, coffee, and floor cleaner. I should have felt useful there. Instead, I felt like I had walked into a play after everyone else had rehearsed. People recognized Caleb immediately. "Caleb, the sound system is acting up." "Caleb, Lydia was looking for you." "Caleb, can you check the donation table lights?" He moved through the room with easy familiarity, touching shoulders, laughing, taking instructions like a man who belonged. I stood with my tray. A woman I did not know took it from me and said, "Oh good, more quiches." "Lydia's kit. Hen team is incredible." "Lydia's kitchen team." I looked at Caleb. He did not hear or pretended not to. Then I saw Lydia. She was beautiful in a soft, approachable way. Brown hair pinned loosely, floral dress, cardigan, name tag written in careful script, not flashy, church beautiful. The kind of woman people trust with casseroles and secrets. She stood near the donation table arranging baskets, and when Caleb crossed the room, she looked up at him with a smile that belonged to routine. Not surprise, routine. He leaned close to hear something she said. She touched his forearm briefly. No one reacted. That was the part that made my stomach drop. Nobody reacted because nobody thought it was strange. Elaine Porter found me 10 minutes later. I knew who she was from Caleb's stories. Pastor Aaron's wife, retired school librarian, gentle voice, steel spine according to Caleb. She approached with 2 cups of lemonade and handed one to me. "You must be Meredith." "I am." Her eyes moved over my face with a carefulness I recognized from women who had spent years reading rooms for damage. "I am so glad you came." "Me too." That was not entirely true, but politeness still lived in me. She glanced toward Lydia and Caleb, then back to me. "Could I steal you for just a moment?" She led me near the fellowship hall kitchen, behind a stack of donation boxes and a table of silent auction forms. Her hand touched my elbow. Lightly, not ownership. Warning. "Meredith, I do not want to embarrass you." My mouth went dry. "What is it?" She lowered her voice. "I always wondered why you never came to their house for the small group dinners." I stared at her. "Their house?" Elaine's face changed. She realized all at once that the floor under my marriage had not only cracked, I had not known it was there. "Oh," she said softly. I looked past her to the bulletin board. There was a photo of Caleb and Lydia standing at a kitchen island. Not our kitchen. A different kitchen. Lydia's, I learned later. They were smiling with serving spoons in their hands, surrounded by bowls, bread baskets, and a chalkboard sign that said Wednesday Welcome Dinner. Under the photo, someone had printed, "Caleb and Lydia, Wednesday Outreach Hosts." A second photo showed them at a long table with donation baskets. A third showed Caleb carrying a tray while Lydia held a clipboard. There were other people in the photos, but somehow the composition always found them together. I felt the tray handles still pressing into my palms, though I no longer held the tray. Elaine whispered, "I thought maybe you and Caleb were separated. People said you liked it better that way." People. That word is useful when nobody wants to name the source. "Who said that?" I asked. She looked at Caleb. That was enough. I did not walk across the room and confront him. I did not throw lemonade. I did not ask Lydia what she thought she was doing with my husband. I stood there beside the donation boxes and let my face become calm, because I had spent too many years catering events to forget how to behave in public. Elaine said quietly, "I am sorry." I believed her. Then she added, "There are schedules, meeting minutes, host lists. If you need to understand what has been written down, ask me." Written down. Those words steadied me. A rumor is smoke. Paper is a wall. I stayed for 43 more minutes. Long enough to see Lydia accept praise for the food table. Long enough to hear Pastor Aaron thank the Wednesday night home team. Long enough to watch Caleb stand beside Lydia, as if the room had arranged them there, and he was too humble to object. A woman near me said, "They make such a good team." I looked at her. She smiled, embarrassed. "For outreach, I mean." Of course, everything had a softer meaning if anyone challenged it. Before I left, I took pictures of the bulletin board, the fundraiser program, the volunteer schedule pinned near the kitchen. Caleb and Lydia listed together. Caleb and Lydia host contacts. Caleb and Lydia donation drive setup. Caleb and Lydia small group dinner rotation. My name appeared nowhere, not once. At home, Caleb acted irritated before I said anything. That told me he knew. He put his keys in the bowl by the door and said, You were quiet tonight. I was learning. His shoulders tightened. Learning what? How many people think you and Lydia host dinners together? He closed his eyes for 1 second, not guilt, calculation. Meredith, please do not turn church outreach into jealousy. There it was, the hallway he wanted me to walk down, jealous woman, insecure wife, misunderstanding charity because another woman was visible. I refused the hallway. I asked a factual question. No, you are implying something ugly. I am asking why the pastor's wife asked me about their house. He rubbed his forehead. Elaine is old-fashioned. She reads too much into hosting. Did you tell people we were separated? His head snapped up. No, did you tell people? I do not like people. He looked away. That was the first answer. Caleb, I said crowds drain you, that is true. Did you tell people I preferred to stay home? You do prefer staying home? When I am working. He exhaled sharply. You see, this is why I did not push you to come. You turn things into questions. I almost smiled because that sentence matched the one already forming in my evidence folder before the folder existed. I am tired, I said. He looked relieved. He thought the argument had ended because I was retreating. It had not ended. It had entered the records phase. The next morning I began with money, not feelings. Money. Feelings are easy to deny. Receipts are less polite. I opened my catering account and searched transfers from the last year. Church, New Mercy, Caleb, cash withdrawals. Grocery runs on days before Wednesday dinners. Wholesale orders larger than my client calendar justified. Supply purchases coded as household but delivered to Caleb's car. $7,840. That was the first total I could document clearly. Not counting my time. Not counting food from our own pantry. Not counting linens that came back stained or not at all. Not counting the emotional labor of caring whether people were fed. $7,840 in money, deposits, supplies, and purchases connected to church events where my husband and another woman were thanked as the team. I printed the statements, I circled each amount in red, then I went through texts. Caleb, can you do 2 trays for Wednesday? Lydia says they are short. Caleb, do we have extra drink dispensers? Church needs them tonight. Caleb, I know it is last minute, but the pantry dinner is bigger than expected. Caleb, please do not invoice this one yet. Reimbursement is coming through donations. Caleb, you are saving us again. Us. I read that word for a long time. Not me and Caleb. Caleb and Lydia. Caleb and the church. Caleb and the life where I was useful only before the doors opened. I printed the texts. Then receipts, grocery runs, disposable pans, napkins, flour, eggs, chicken, fruit, paper cups, labels, sanitizer, tablecloths. My business card attached to payment confirmations. Donation receipts with Caleb's email but my account. A kitchen invoice from Thompson Supply, with the church event name and my payment authorization. I made 3 piles on the dining table. Money, labor, public record. Then I moved the piles into a binder because my mother had taught me that grief should not have to return dishes, and I had learned on my own that betrayal should not have to explain itself twice. Elaine called that afternoon. I am sorry if I caused trouble, she said. You did not cause it. I have been uneasy for months. Why? She paused. Because your food had a different name in the kitchen than it had in the thank you announcements. I closed my eyes. What name? Lydia's team. My hand tightened around the phone. Elaine continued, gentle but clear. I do not want gossip. I want the records to stop saying something the marriage never agreed to. That sentence made me trust her. Not completely. Enough. She offered copies of volunteer schedules, board minutes, host lists, and emails where Caleb and Lydia were listed together for Wednesday dinners and small group events. She said she could not speak for the whole church, but she could provide records she had access to as part of the hospitality committee. We met 2 nights later in the church parking lot after choir practice. The lot was half-lit, humid, and full of the soft echo of people leaving rehearsal. Elaine handed me a sealed manila envelope through my car window. I told Aaron I was giving you copies of committee records involving your household, she said. What did he say? He said it was overdue. That almost broke me, not because the pastor knew everything. I do not think he did, but because somewhere in that church, someone had noticed enough to know silence had become cooperation. I thanked her. She touched the envelope. Meredith, Lydia may not understand the whole story. I looked at her. I am not defending her, Elaine said. I am saying Caleb may have given different people different lies. That turned out to be true, not enough to make Lydia innocent, enough to keep the story from becoming simple. The envelope contained schedules, host lists, meeting notes, and 3 board references to Caleb and Lydia as outreach dinner leads. One line made my skin go cold. Caleb and Lydia will continue hosting at Lydia's home twice monthly. Meredith prefers not to attend but contributes support items as available. Support items. As available. I had been reduced to pantry weather. That night, Caleb came home late from another church meeting. I put my phone on the pantry shelf and pressed record before he entered the kitchen. He picked up 3 trays I had prepared earlier, because I had not yet decided whether to stop supplying immediately or document one more request. That sounds calculated. It was. Calm women are often accused of being manipulative when they finally begin preserving proof of manipulation. Caleb looked at the trays. Thank you for still doing these. For Lydia's team, his face tightened. Do not start. I am asking what the church calls it, he sighed. Lydia knows how to talk to church people. You would turn it into questions. There it was, spoken clearly into my phone. I leaned against the counter. Why do they think I do not come? Because you do not. Why do I not? Because every time I suggest it, you act like you are being dragged into a performance. I asked to come many times. You asked in that way you do when you are already judging. I watched him stack the trays. Caleb, did you tell them I do not like people? He set a tray down harder than necessary. I told them crowds drain you because you have said that exact sentence. Did you tell them I prefer to stay home? You do prefer to stay home. Did you tell them we are separated? No. Did you correct people who assumed we were? Silence. That silence went into the recording too. Finally, he said, I am not responsible for every assumption people make. No, just the ones that benefit you. His eyes flashed. You want to make this ugly because another woman is good at something. I kept my voice level. Another woman is being thanked for what came out of my kitchen and my bank account. He picked up the trays. Please do not embarrass me at church. That was the center of it. Not please do not be hurt. Not I am sorry you feel erased. Please do not embarrass me. After he left, I saved the recording in 3 places. Then I called Tara Winslow. Tara was a nonprofit accounting advisor and attorney who had helped one of my catering clients untangle a messy charity auction dispute. She had silver curls, bright lipstick, and the kind of calm that comes from having seen too many people confuse good intentions with missing receipts. I met her in her office the next morning with my binder. She read for almost an hour, not every page, enough to understand the shape. Then she took 3 sticky tabs and labeled them. Money, labor, public record. You need to be precise, she said. Do not accuse a church of what your husband did. Bring them the paper and let the paper separate the two. I do not want to destroy anyone. Good. Destruction is messy and expensive. Correction is cleaner. She helped me draft a reimbursement letter for the documented business funds and household supplies that had been used under misleading circumstances. She separated personal pain from financial fact. She advised me not to discuss Lydia directly until the records established what happened. She also told me to stop providing any food, supplies, or deposits immediately unless a formal invoice came from my business and was approved by me directly. That part felt obvious once she said it. It also felt like withdrawal. The next Wednesday, Caleb came home to an empty counter. He looked around. Where are the trays? What trays? For tonight. I did not make any. His face changed. Meredith, I told Lydia you were doing pasta salad and fruit. No, you said the church needed them. I did not agree. He stared at me like I had broken a contract I had never signed. You are really going to punish families because you are mad at me? No, I said. I am going to stop letting you order generosity from my kitchen and deliver it under someone else's name. He stepped closer. This is not who you are. That almost worked. People who use your goodness against you know exactly where to press. I looked at him. You are right. I am usually kinder than this. That is why it took you so long to get caught. He left without trays. At 8:30 that night, Lydia texted me for the first time directly. Hi Meredith, this is Lydia from New Mercy. I hope you are okay. Caleb said there was a misunderstanding about tonight's food. We had several families arrive expecting dinner. I am not sure what happened, but I would love to talk woman to woman. Woman to woman, I read it twice. Then I wrote back, I am available to discuss records with Pastor Aaron, Elaine, and the board present. I will not discuss my marriage privately with you through Caleb's version of events. She did not respond for 40 minutes. Then she wrote, I did not realize there were records. That sentence told me a lot. The board meeting happened 9 days later. It was originally scheduled to discuss the fall community dinner drive, donation logistics, and volunteer assignments. Elaine told me Caleb and Lydia would both be there. Tara advised that if I wanted correction without gossip, that was the room. Not Sunday service, not a hallway, not a public fight. The board meeting had the people who controlled announcements, reimbursements, volunteer lists, and records. I told Caleb I was attending. He laughed once, not B. Because it was funny, but because he was scared and wanted the sound to become disbelief. Meredith, you cannot just walk into a board meeting. I was invited. By who? Elaine. His face darkened. Elaine should mind her own marriage. She noticed mine was being misrepresented in church records. Pointed at me, do not do this. What is this? Turned service into a spreadsheet. I held his gaze. You turned my spreadsheet into your service. He had no answer. The board meeting was held in a classroom off the fellowship hall. Beige walls, whiteboard, stackable chairs, a long table with bottled water and a plate of cookies. Pastor Aaron sat at one end, Elaine beside him. Lydia sat halfway down the table with a notebook open, her pen lined neatly along the edge. Caleb sat next to her. Of course he did. When I entered with Tara, Caleb stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Lydia looked at me, then Tara, then the binder in my hands. Pastor Aaron stood too. Meredith, thank you for coming. His voice was careful, but not cold. Tara introduced herself and explained that we were there to correct records and address documented financial contributions connected to church events, not to accuse the church as an institution of wrongdoing, not to create gossip. To correct records. Caleb said, this is a marital issue. Tara looked at him. Not once church donation receipts, volunteer schedules, and reimbursement records are involved. Pastor Aaron folded his hands. Let her speak, Caleb. Caleb sat. I placed the binder on the table. It made almost no sound. Still, everyone looked at it. I opened with the church bulletin photo. Caleb and Lydia smiling under Wednesday outreach hosts. Then the volunteer schedule. Then the board minutes. Then the host list, naming them as small group dinner contacts at Lydia's house. I said, when I attended the fundraiser, I learned that people here believed my husband and Lydia hosted dinners together, that I preferred not to attend, and that my role was occasional support from home. Lydia shifted. That was what Caleb told us. Caleb shot her a look. She looked back at him, and for the first time I saw uncertainty in her face. I continued. Here are the texts where Caleb requested food, supplies, linens, drink dispensers, paper goods, and business purchases from me for those events. Here are grocery receipts and kitchen invoices paid from my business or household accounts. Here are donation receipts connected to those purchases. Tara laid out the first set. Pastor Aaron picked up a receipt. His eyes moved to the bottom, where Meredith Vale Kitchen was printed as the payment account. Elaine closed her eyes briefly. I said, the documented amount I can verify is $7,840. That does not include unpaid labor or goods I cannot prove clearly enough. One of the board members, a woman named Ruth, looked at Caleb. You told us the donation team had covered most of that through Lydia's contacts. Caleb said, I said we had help. You said Lydia coordinated it, Ruth replied. Lydia's face flushed. I did coordinate some of it, she said. I never said I paid for everything. I looked at her. Did you know the supplies were coming from my catering business? She hesitated. That hesitation mattered. I knew some food came from you, she said. Caleb said you preferred not to be contacted directly. I nodded slowly. That sentence hurt, but it also clarified. Caleb had built walls in both directions. He told me church people were too much. He told them I wanted distance. He told Lydia I preferred not to be contacted. He told everyone exactly enough to keep each woman in her assigned room. Tara moved to the financial section. She read the reimbursement letter, the account transfer list, and the Thompsons' supply invoice. Then Elaine gave her statement. "I heard Caleb say Meredith preferred to stay in the background," Elaine said. "I also heard people refer to Caleb and Lydia as a team in ways that made me uncomfortable once I realized Meredith was contributing food and supplies. I should have asked sooner." Caleb leaned forward. "Elaine, that is unfair." Pastor Aaron looked at him. "Let her finish." Elaine did. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. "I asked Meredith about their house because I believed, based on church schedules and repeated comments, that Caleb and Lydia were hosting in a way his wife understood. Meredith did not understand because she had not been told the truth." The room was silent. Then Tara nodded to me. I played the recording. My phone speaker was small, but Caleb's voice filled the room clearly. "Lydia knows how to talk to church people. You would turn it into questions." Then my voice asked why people thought I did not come. Caleb's voice answered, "I am not responsible for every assumption people make." Then my voice said, "No, just the ones that benefit you." I stopped the recording there. Nobody needed more. Pasto. Aaron turned the donation receipt over in his hand and looked at Caleb. "Caleb, this church thanked the wrong person because you let us." Caleb's face went red. "I was trying to serve. I did not ask for all this attention." I looked at the bulletin photo, his shoulder touching Lydia's, their names printed together, their host list, their thank you cards. "No," I said, "you accepted it." He looked at me with anger now, not panic, anger. "You never wanted this community, you always judged it from the outside." There it was. The story he had been telling, thrown at me in full form because the documents had trapped him. I kept my voice calm. "I was outside because you kept me there." Lydia spoke then, quietly. "Caleb, did you tell people Meredith did not like being around us because she asked not to come or because you did not want her here?" He turned on her. "Do not make this about you." Her face changed. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Pastor Aaron removed his glasses and set them on the table. "We need to correct public records and reimbursement records," he said. "Tonight." Caleb shook his head. "You are all overreacting." Ruth said, "A church cannot build outreach on money taken from a wife who was misrepresented to us." Another board member, Dale, asked whether donations had been improperly recorded. Tara answered carefully. She was not accusing the church of misusing funds. She was showing that Caleb submitted or coordinated purchases in ways that obscured the true source and created a false public narrative. Pastor Aaron asked Lydia whether she had received public credit for food or supplies she did not prepare or fund. Lydia looked down at her notebook. "Yes," she said. "I think I did." Caleb stared at her. She did not look at him. I did not need her humiliation. I needed the truth to stop wearing my apron. Tara passed the reimbursement letter to Pastor Aaron and the treasurer. It requested that church records reflect Meredith Vale Kitchen as the source of documented in-kind contributions, and that reimbursements be directed appropriately where funds had been used under misleading representations by Caleb. It also requested that future volunteer materials remove any implication that Caleb and Lydia hosted as a household unit connected to my marriage. That last part made Caleb laugh bitterly. "Household unit," he said. "Listen to this legal nonsense." I looked at him. "You made my marriage a church rumor. Legal nonsense is what cleaned it up." He looked away. Pastor Aaron said, "Caleb, you need to step back from outreach while we review this." Caleb stood. "You are choosing paperwork over service." Elaine answered before anyone else could. "No, we are choosing truth over performance." I will remember that line for the rest of my life. Caleb left the room. For once, nobody followed him. Tara drove me home because I did not trust myself to drive right away. I sat in her passenger seat with the binder on my lap, watching the church disappear behind us. "You were controlled," she said. "I feel stupid." That is not the same thing. It feels close. It always does when trust was used as access. At home, Caleb was waiting. He had not packed. He had not cooled down. He was pacing the living room like a man rehearsing 5 arguments and deciding which one made him least guilty. "You humiliated me," he said. "I set the binder on the dining table." "No, I documented you." He pointed toward the church, though it was miles away. "You do not understand what that place meant to me." "I understand exactly what it meant. It was where you got to be generous with my labor and admired beside another woman." His mouth tightened. Nothing happened with Lydia. I believed, strangely, that he meant nothing physical. Maybe he had not crossed that line. Maybe he had stayed in the safe gray area where people could call me jealous if I named the intimacy. But betrayal does not need a hotel receipt to become real. "You built a household image with her," I said. "You hosted dinners in her kitchen while taking food from mine. You let people think I was cold so nobody asked why I was missing. Whether you slept with her is not the only question." He looked exhausted suddenly. "You were always so busy," he said. There it was. The first attempt to make my work the reason he erased me. "I was busy making the food you carried into another woman's applause." He sat down. For a moment, he looked like the man from the employee luncheon, stacking chairs after everyone left. Helpful, tired, almost good. "I liked being needed there," he said quietly. I nodded. "I know. At home, everything was bills, schedules, invoices. At church, everything was gratitude." He looked at me. "You understand." "No," I said. "I can explain it. That is not the same as excusing it." His eyes filled. I hated that they did. Tears make history complicated. They ask for softness from the person who has already been carrying too much. "I did not mean to hurt you like this," he said. "You meant to avoid discomfort. You meant to protect your image. You meant to keep Lydia's admiration and my usefulness at the same time. The hurt was a cost you were willing not to look at." He cried then. I did not comfort him. That was new for me. The next morning, I opened a separate business account and removed Caleb's card from every vendor profile. I changed passwords. I contacted Thompson Supply, my grocery wholesaler, and 2 local farms I bought from regularly. No pickup authorization without my written approval. No invoices through Caleb. No charitable donation entries without my business name and direct consent. It took 3 hours. It should have taken 1 sentence a year earlier. Tara sent the reimbursement letter formally. The church board responded within 10 days. They corrected records. They reimbursed documented expenses that the church had received as event support once the treasurer reviewed what had been misrepresented. They also sent a public thank you in the next volunteer email, naming Meredith Vale Kitchen for prior in-kind contributions. I read that email 3 times, not because I needed praise, because my name looked almost unfamiliar in the place where it had been missing. Lydia sent me one message. "Meredith, I am sorry for accepting a role I should have questioned. Caleb told me you preferred not to be contacted and that your marriage had shifted into separate lives. I should have asked you directly before letting people thank me for things I did not provide. I am stepping back from Wednesday hosting." I did not answer for 2 weeks. Then I wrote, "Thank you for acknowledging it. I hope you understand that being misled does not erase the harm of accepting the position." She replied, "I do." That was all. Caleb and I separated in September. Not loudly. Not with a dramatic scene at church or an affair confession that made everything clean. He moved into a short-term rental near his office. I stayed in the house because my business was built into the kitchen, and because, for once, I refused to be the woman who lost the workspace while he searched for himself in other people's gratitude. He asked for counseling. I went twice. The counselor asked Caleb what he got from the church relationship that he did not feel at home. He said, "Admiration." The honesty surprised me. Then he added, "Meredith is hard to impress." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because I had spent years admiring him for fixing shelves, carrying boxes, showing up, trying to be useful. But admiration that has to compete with truth starts to feel like criticism to people who need applause more than intimacy. I said, "I was proud of you when I thought you were serving. I stopped being proud when I learned I was one of the supplies." The counselor wrote something down. Caleb did not look at me. Elaine came by the house in October with a small envelope. She asked first if she could visit. That mattered. People who ask permission after you have been erased understand at least part of the injury. She stood in my kitchen, looking at the cooling racks, the labeled bins, the flour container, the tray shelves. "I should have asked sooner," she said. "Yes," she nodded. "I know." She handed me the envelope. Inside was a printed copy of the corrected volunteer email, a handwritten note from Pastor Aaron, and a small reimbursement check for 2 undocumented supply purchases the board believed had likely come from me but could not fully trace. "We wanted to err toward repair," she said. That sentence made my throat tight. Repair is not the same as restoration, but it is better than reputation management. In November, New Mercy hosted a small community meal after a storm knocked power out in parts of town. Elaine called and asked if I would cater under my own business name. No hidden donation. No Caleb. No Lydia. A direct order, a direct invoice, and a direct thank you. I almost said no, then I thought about my mother's foil pans. Service had not betrayed me. Caleb had, so I said yes. I made chicken and rice soup, biscuits, apple cake, and trays of roasted vegetables. I labeled every tray before loading them into my car. Prepared by Meredith Vale Kitchen. The labels were simple, white with black lettering, nothing dramatic. At the church, I carried the first tray in myself. Elaine met me at the door and did not touch it until I handed it to her. That small thing nearly undid me. Inside the fellowship hall, people were setting up tables, but the room felt different now. Or maybe I did. Pastor Aaron came over and thanked me by name. Ruth from the board asked where I wanted the invoice sent. A teenage volunteer said the biscuits smelled amazing, and I laughed because teenagers are still honest when biscuits are involved. After the meal, Elaine made a short announcement. Not a sermon, not a public dissection of my marriage. She simply said, "Tonight's meal was prepared by Moretti, Th Vale Kitchen, and we are grateful for her work." People clapped. I stood near the kitchen doorway and let the sound pass through me without trying to drink it. I did not need applause to become whole. I needed the room to know whose hands had been there. Later, after the tables were wiped and the last soup container was packed for a family without power, I stood alone by the donation table where Elaine had first asked about their house. The bulletin board had new photos now. No Caleb and Lydia caption. No false host pair. Just volunteers, families, food, winter coats, ordinary service without romance staged inside it. I thought about the phrase "their house." It used to feel like a knife. Now it felt like evidence from a life I had left. Caleb texted that night, "I heard you catered New Mercy." I did not answer. Then he sent, "I guess you got what you wanted." I looked around my kitchen, the sink full of pans, the counter dusted with flour. My business account secure, my name on the invoice, my body tired from honest work instead of hidden use. I typed back one sentence. "I wanted my life back from your performance." Then I blocked him for the night because peace sometimes needs a lock. I kept catering, I kept serving. But I stopped confusing disappearance with humility. That was the lesson I wish I had learned sooner. Service should not require a woman to vanish. Love should not turn a wife into a pantry. Generosity should not be delivered under another woman's name while the giver is described as cold, anxious, or absent. I did not stop feeding people. I stopped letting my husband turn service into disappearance. Before you go, tell me this. If your husband built a whole community life where another woman stood beside him while your money and labor fed the room, would you expose it publicly or walk away quietly? And tell me your name and the city you are watching from. I want to know where this story found you.